Perfect. I'm Mike Rothman. I am General Manager of Techstrong Research. We're going to talk a little bit about DevOps and DevSecOps and acronyms and words, and really just to try to give you a sense of where things are going. Right? How many folks are familiar with the term DevOps? Everybody? All right, good. The marketing people have done okay, right? They've told you a little bit about DevOps and developers. Oh, let me get a sense. How many security folks? Almost everybody. Developers? Handful. Operations people, even if you're in security, have like security ops responsibility. Okay, so mostly a security crowd. That's okay, because what we need to do is start to understand the perspectives of these other folks, right? And practice something, and it's going to be hard. I know we're security folks, and you know the EQ level tends to be down there. That's emotional quotient there. Empathy. Everybody know what empathy means? Yeah, a little bit? Okay, so we're going to try to put ourselves in the shoes of some of these other folks, because for a long time, and I'm not a young guy, I don't know if you could tell that or not. I've been doing this for 30 years. In fact, I was trying to do the math on the walk over here. I think I've been to 24 or 25 out of the last 27 RSA conferences. How many folks are not yet 25 or 26? A handful? That's great. Yeah, I know, you look it. That's great. You look great for, 25. So that was, it's always kind of a little bit both intimidating and kind of like, you're like, what the hell happened, right? Where there were folks in the room that like were in diapers when I started coming to the RSA show up at Nob Hill, right? It wasn't in the Moscone always. We didn't do that. It was at the Fairmont Nob Hill, and then we went down to San Jose for a little while. So enough about, my wacky stories, right? What we want to do is kind of get a sense of where kind of the whole process of building software is going and where security fits into that. So, there's a disclaimer. Basically, RSA is not responsible for anything I say. Okay, we're all good with that? So if I throw some F-bombs or I make bad analogies or anything like that, the RSA conference has nothing to do with that. And I think I've spoken at 15 or 16 of these, so I would say maybe they wouldn't invite me back next year, but I still get invited back all the time. So what is Techstrong Research? So what is Techstrong? Techstrong's a media company that has a number of properties that you may be familiar with, like DevOps.com or Security Boulevard or our Cloud Native Now property. So what we do is we're a media company. I actually run a research business within the middle of a media company that focuses on those topics, right? The intersection of DevOps and cybersecurity and cloud native infrastructure like, Kubernetes and a lot of the stuff that the CNCF are handling and taking care of, and really trying to put some structure around what's happening in the environment, to use data and leverage an audience, which I think I have some audience data there. So, 650,000 unique visitors over the last couple of days, 990,000 page views over the last 60 days. And I'm not doing that to, kind of puff myself up and make me feel good, although it does feel a little good, just like a little smidgen on that front. What it is I'm going to show you a bunch of data, right? Bar charts. I wasn't sophisticated enough to do pie charts, so I'll apologize for that up front. But we've got a lot of bar charts in terms of data from the audience about where they come down relative to DevOps, DevSecOps, some of the key issues, some of the requirements, some of the aspirations and goals that they have for that. 58% of the audience is decision makers, area of interest, right? 50% are in what I term, at least mid-size enterprises of 1,000 folks with 200 million in revenue. So we talk to a whole bunch of people, right? And what you're going to see is a variety of different things over the next 45 minutes or so that we have left, right? We're going to see a bunch of charts about where the customers think DevSecOps is in its evolution and why they're interested in it. Then we're going to look at it from a DevOps standpoint, and I know only a handful of you are actual developers, so hopefully it'll teach you a little bit about how the developers think about kind of a lot of these issues, because again, it's absolutely critical that as security folks, we're in a position to influence these people, help them understand why it's actually in their best interest to think about security as they're moving forward in their day. We'll talk about cloud native infrastructure and what even that means, right, and some of the aspects of securing that environment, because it really is an underappreciated aspect of protecting the whole software supply chain. And then we'll kind of wrap up with a whole bunch of information about security and what it is that we need to do on that front. So that now that you know where it is that we're going, well, we're not ready to go there yet. What I do for Techstrong Research are trends. So every year in January, we have a conference we call Predict. For Predict, I put together trends for each one of our major coverage areas, so security, digital transformation, cloud native infrastructure, and DevOps trends. If you just go to techstrongresearch.com, you can get the trends documents. We don't charge, we don't force you to register or anything like that. So you can get a sense of what it is that we're expecting, and throughout the talk today, I will refer back to some of those trends where they are relevant and interesting. So, DevOps is now DevSecOps. We did an event on Monday, actually over in, it was in this building, called DevOps Connect. We've been doing this for 9 years. It really was kind of one of the first security-oriented DevOps conferences that were out there, and our theme this year was this very theme. DevOps is now DevSecOps. If you talk to companies that do DevOps, they talk about DevSecOps. Right? And I could tell funny stories about how when DevOps kind of came out and you know, folks looked at that and the security people go, where's security? Right? And then, you know, I don't know, and maybe it's just me, but you know, a lot of folks that I know, you know, that do security, well, they get a little bit concerned about their place in the organization. Right? So DevOps is happening, there's all this excitement about DevOps, and there's no security. What does that mean for me? Right, so there's all sorts of, you know, and the therapy bills went up, and everybody's like, what's my, you know, relevance in the world moving forward? No? Oh boy, this is a tough crowd, 8:30 in the morning. I'm not even getting any smiles out of these things. Holy shit, this is gonna be a tough one. That's all right, I'll just start making fun of you guys if you don't play along with me. That's okay, I do that too. So, you know, again, we're at this point where somebody came up with this idea of, hey, let's make the security people feel okay and call it DevSecOps, right? At first, the security folks said, I really want it to be SecDevOps, because of course, security, right? But no. So we negotiated and it came up with DevSecOps, and obviously I'm making up that entire story to see who was up and who wasn't. There's decent coffee out there if anybody needs some more caffeine. So industry has adopted DevSecOps as its shiny new object for like 5 or 6 years, right? So one of the folks that actually initiated this term, Shannon Leitz, who's doing her own thing now, you know, she actually registered DevSecOps.com, you know, like 100 years ago, and has a lot of these aspects. You know, for the front end of the process, the most sophisticated, most mature environments, they're kind of moving on to value and value management and value chain, and honestly, I don't even understand it at this point. But the rest of the world is still trying to grapple with what does DevSecOps mean to them. And it means different things to different people, right, reality, and we'll look at it from all the different perspectives. And I just love this. This is a Reservoir Dogs meme. Any Reservoir Dogs fans out there? Handful? You're all asleep? I know, it's 8:30, and I mean, yeah. Okay, I'll just keep going through the data and then, got it. All right, let's talk about data. So, DevSecOps is a set of tools and processes, 27%, right? A cultural shift to promote shared ownership of security outcomes, 62.5%. And then a bias towards cross-functional team engagement. Nobody cares about team engagement, right? We hate them, they hate us, that's okay, we go through our day, right? I'm not interested in anybody else's perspective, you know, so only 11% said, yeah, no, we really should work better together as a team. So never mind that. Let's talk a little bit about a cultural shift, because it is no less than that, right? We are changing how we do software. And DevOps is really kind of that cultural shift, but how security gets integrated into that, because here's how most security happens. Anybody remember waterfall, right? Should we have a moment of silence for waterfall, you know, everybody? You know, kind of the good old days when we drop software once every 6 months, and, you know, the rest of the time we security folks could, you know, basically screw off, most of the time, and then the 2 weeks before release, they'd go, oh, by the way, we're going to release software the only time in the next 6 months, in the next 2 weeks, so maybe we should check if it's secure. And then you spend 2 weeks, working 24-hour days trying to figure out what is actually going to break when you release this thing, and then the rest of the 5 months we're kind of screwing off. Remember those days? Of course, we didn't screw off those days. We were fixing firewall issues and cleaning up malware and all sorts of other stuff like that. But we didn't really have to worry about application security from that perspective. But then this DevOps thing happened, and they're like, no, we need to do things faster. Right? We need to roll out more software. We need to do it with higher velocity. We need to drop, kind of new capabilities, I don't know, once a week. Right? Then they're like once a day, and then they're like 5 times a day, and then you're like, whoa, hold on a second. I had to work for like 2 weeks every 6 months, and now you're telling me I got to work, 5 times a day in order to make sure that this stuff is happening. And then you look at the number of people on your team, and you go, yeah, I'm not too good at math, but this don't work. Right? I've got a whole bunch of code that I'm working through, and we're trying to drop it 4 or 5 times a day, and I'm supposed to do some measure of scrutiny and analysis on how that code could potentially be attacked, and I've got 3 folks, or maybe 4 folks, or maybe you're heavily funded and you have 10 folks, right? And you're doing 15 applications, 20 applications, 30 applications 5 times a week. Again, you don't have to be too good at math to know that doesn't work out very well. So you have to think about how your whole environment changes. Where can I start to insert security as early into that process? We'll talk a little bit about this later, but then came this idea called shift left. Everybody heard of that one? Shift left. You can't go down to the show floor and not hear about shifting somewhere. I've got to shift something somewhere. We'll talk about that a lot later. DevSecOps is primarily focused on the SDLC pipeline, 34% operational concerns. GRC is 40%. My friend John Michael, who is one of the leading experts in GRC, cloud GRC things out there, loves this chart, right? Because, again, most people think about DevSecOps as a way to make the regulator go away faster, which, by the way, is what we all want to do. Any auditors in here? No? A 1? Okay, I'm going to make fun of you for a sec, so don't take it personally. I'm just kidding, right? But, again, what we're trying to do is do our job operationally, and, what the compliance folks do is very important to help us put some boundaries and some goals around what we do. But the fact of the matter is, every time we're sitting in Excel massaging data to show to an auditor is stuff we're not doing operational things. We're not scanning an application. We're not working with developers. We're not moving forward the ball relative to what we have to do for a security program standpoint. So I thought that was very interesting perspective. Again, the data is the data, right? So when you ask enough people, you're going to find out things. And so this is largely a perception issue that if I integrate security into how I'm building software, that's going to help me achieve compliance. Right? I mean, if I'm sitting there saying what's most important to me, what do I think it's primarily focused on? It's both the SDLC pipeline and the operational concerns. Because do you see, it says DevSecOps. Well, if we think about it in one way, you could put parentheses around the DevSec piece of it, and that leads you to trying to integrate security more effectively into your development pipeline. And then if you kind of take your parentheses, right, your little eraser. We all do things on, iPads now, so we don't actually have to use erasers. So we'll just kind of hit the button and erase something, and then build other parens around SecOps. That's the operational concern piece of it, right? So it's not either or. What we're trying to do is focus on building security into the entire process. So we're not marginalized. We're actually thought about as we move forward into this environment. Where are you on the journey? 31%, the leading answer says, what is DevSecOps? So some of you may actually have been in that boat, and that's why you're here, so welcome, I appreciate that, right? All of our teams do DevSecOps, some do Dev, some do Sec, right? That's 19%. We have a centralized group that guides teams through the journey. That's interesting, right? 23%. That's a much more mature motion. That's something we would maybe call a center of excellence, right? Some group that is available to advise all the development teams in the environment to help them understand how they should be doing security, how they should be building out their pipeline, how they should be managing things like software supply chain issues, where you can leverage the shared knowledge of the organization and move it forward. We have a self-sustaining DevSecOps team and culture, 17%. Yeah, there are some. Probably born in the cloud, right? Founded within the last, couple of years, never had any installed base or legacy stuff, or, and they say mainframe, what's that? I actually started my career as a mainframe programmer, so that should give you a little bit of an idea about how old I am on that front. So one of the greatest days in the early part of my career was when I got a color monitor, right? I had no reason to have a color monitor because then it made my green screen into orange. So when I was coding, and it was orange screen then. But I could do email. Anybody know CC mail? Anybody remember that? CC mail? Yeah, only a handful of you guys. God, I'm getting old. Wow. So CC mail would allow me to do like color things, and I could see my email in color. So it was a very exciting day for me. What is the top benefit of embedding security earlier in the dev lifecycle? Right, fewer security alerts and vulnerabilities and enhanced security posture. Those by far are the favorite answers to this question. And that's true, right? We can certainly enhance our security posture, especially if we start thinking about everything as code. Have you ever heard of this term, infrastructure as code? Yeah, that's when you're actually programming, building a template that then you kind of pop through an environment and it magically results in resources being spun up in some platform that probably is not your data center. I mean, I come from the days where when I needed a new server, what did I do? I filled out 3 forms in triplicate, right? I waited for the procurement group to, buy something from whatever, mini computer thing was there. I waited probably 4 or 5 weeks for that thing to show up. I had to have the guys on the shipping dock bring it up into the data center where they put it in a rack, and then I could actually start to get to work on it. Now I can go click, click, but I don't even have to do click, click. Right now I can have a set of alerts that trigger an infrastructure as code template that spin up a bunch of resources, so it's just there before I even know it needs to be there. Right? It's a totally different, kind of perspective. I can build security into that process, so that obviously will enhance my security posture. Fewer security alerts and vulnerabilities if I work faster. Well, that depends, right? That depends on what happens when I have one of those alerts or vulnerabilities and how quickly I can get the developers to go back and fix the defects that we find in the process. So yes, that is certainly a benefit if you do it right. If you don't, then you're pretty much like everybody else, which, kind of has a list of security things, and the Scrum Master is looking at the set of features that they need to fix for the next sprint, and they go, revenue generating, revenue generating, revenue generating, revenue generating, security, 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 right? Because they haven't made the connection that if something bad happens on security, it actually impacts the revenue generating stuff. But people get there when they get there. What are the biggest roadblock implementing DevSecOps? Right, time and resources. So you all get through your list every day, right? You just kind of like, oh, I'm good. I'll leave, 4:30. I got a tea time, It's the summer now, right? So it's usually light until 7:30, 8 o'clock where you live. So I got tea time at like 4:30. Get through my list by 3:30. Just make sure nothing's going to shake out, and then go play golf or do whatever it is you do. Yeah, everybody? No? Can somebody brew a new cup of coffee at 7:30 and I'm kind of running out of gas and there's still a whole bunch of shit on my list that I got to do? Yeah, is that more like it? Yeah, of course it's more like it. That's kind of our life, right? So we don't have the time and resources, and we're hoping that we can address some of these things in order to make progress, right? And this is kind of the weird irony of the whole thing. Right, DevSecOps is supposed to save us a whole bunch of time and make it much more efficient for us to do stuff, yet we don't have the time and the resources in order to do that. Right, so that's when your manager says, we really, oh God, we're so understaffed, we really need help. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go through the 50 resumes that are sitting in my inbox in order to hire somebody to go and provide some help. So it becomes this catch-22 from the standpoint. Technology stack is old. That's the whole idea of technical debt. Technical debt is a thing. Most of us have installed base, unless, again, you've been founded in the last 3 years and you're born in the cloud. You've got something that is legacy that you wish you could either set on fire or change, or both. And I'll tell you, there's just something about seeing old machines, like, it's not great for the environment, but there is something about, just... Security isn't a priority. So that's interesting, right? Because how many of you folks have ever asked somebody at a senior level if security is important to them? Because if you have, you will find that 100% of the time, they say it is. 100%. Because there is no way they are going to say anything in public or write something down that says security is not important to them, because the minute something bad happens, they will get their ass sued. So they will say it's important to them. What we have to watch are actions, right? How much funding do we get? Can we stop something in the development cycle if we know there are critical errors in it? If the answer is no, well, there you have it, right? If the answer is yes, then there you have it. Biggest area of focus for 22 and 23. So again, we asked the same question over 2 years. Mostly the same, right? Same kind of priority. We did see some of the DevOps CI/CD value stream come down in priority, right? Observability come down in priority, but everything else was pretty much up. Security was up marginally on that front, but largely the same, right? We want to make sure that our pipeline actually works and that we're getting value from it. That's the most important thing from a DevOps standpoint. Again, security ends up coming in second there. Culture, a little bit more important on that front. Operating model, significantly, so that's how I'm building out my infrastructure and making sure that that is there. So, for the most part, we want to focus on, kind of making sure that we're getting value out of our environment and that it's secure. DevSecOps, go figure. So, DevOps view, set the foundation, right? So this is our trend. Again, I told you we go through and we build these trend documents in January, right? Hardening the pipeline. So the pipeline is the cornerstone of the software supply chain, and as such manages an organization's software intellectual property. All of your stuff runs through this pipeline. So one of the things that Mark Andreessen said, amongst many things that Mark Andreessen has said over the last couple of years, is that software eats everything. Right? I never said that quote, but there was a corollary to that. The corollary was every company is a software company. Every company is a software company. So your intellectual property is now software. Maybe it's a lot of your intellectual property is software. Maybe it's a little. But some of your intellectual property is software, and that intellectual property is running through your pipeline. Right? DevOps workflow pipelines and tool change must be reliable, resilient, and secure. And as more organizations gain DevOps expertise, they will reassess early tool choices and build an environment appropriate for the culture. So what do most folks, when they start playing around, they play around with some open source stuff, maybe they buy some commercial things, they're building things, they've got some duct tape, they've got some baling wire, you're just trying to get things running, right? Get software from where the developers commit stuff into a repository to where it can get into prod. You're using a bunch of different things to make that happen, and then you do that quite a bit, and you start bringing on teams, and you realize, wow, this works like crap. Because I was just trying to get it done, right? I wasn't really thinking strategically about what it looks like. I'm not, so concerned about making all that. And then at some point you're like, I guess it doesn't scale. We're at that point where we're starting to revisit what makes sense from a technology standpoint. And yeah, now you've got other installed base. So I've got a whole bunch of stuff running through this thing. How do I migrate it off of that thing? So yeah, we're repeating the same sins that we've repeated over and over again. If you stay around this business long enough, you'll see the pendulum go back and forth a number of times and maybe even start to recognize the trends. I don't. I'm surprised every single time. And then 2 days later I go, oh, I think I've seen this before. Of course I've seen this before, right? I've been doing this 30 years. So we want to start thinking about a platform for DevSecOps, right? Best of breed versus platform. Once we get more mature, things like a source code repository, things like application security testing, things like deployment and integration capabilities start to level out, right? So the differentiation becomes less and less. So you walk down onto the show floor and everybody sounds the same. we are definitely at that place. So go down to the show floor, bring like blinders a little bit, because I almost went into a seizure with all the lights. And again, keep in mind, I've been in my basement for like the last 3 years. So you go into a place where all sorts of blinky lights and folks like, oh, Mike, do you know the difference between a hot dog and a hamburger? I'm like, oh my God, did you just ask me the difference between a hot dog and a hamburger? Really? That's your first line to get me interested in coming into your booth? And please don't touch me. These people, they like grab your arms and they're like, oh my God, stranger danger, right? I'm just not interested in that kind of stuff. As we move towards platforms, right? Greater control integration, flexibility, less management overhead, SaaS, right? Some folks downloaded Jenkins and started running it in their own environments, and that's how you built out your pipeline. And then you realize, my God, this sucks. I got to manage all these servers and then upgrade them and patch them, and who the hell wants to do that? I'll just move everything to the cloud. And that's an option, right? And it's not just folks like GitLab that can give you this platform, right? It's each of your cloud platforms has a thing, right? Code commit, or, Azure DevOps, or Google's thing, right? They all want to control all your code from cradle to grave, right? That's what their focus is, right? Historically, best of breed prevails early. Why? You don't know what you don't know. You take something that seems to have a lot of market share and it's kind of interesting, and then at some point you're like, wow, all this integration is giving me heartburn, so I'd rather have it in just one place. Right? So again, we're getting close to that environment, which is why where you see all of the folks that maybe they were an artifact repository or a code repository or just a testing shop, starts either doing acquisitions or bringing out new capabilities that makes them seem much more like a platform, because you all are going to be making decisions like, I don't want 10 vendors to do this, I want 1, maybe 2, which means they all have to do almost everything. And we have to secure the pipeline, right? Software is the lifeblood. I made that point. Pipeline security is an afterthought. This is your intellectual property. You must treat it as such, which means securing the pipeline. How many folks use outsourced developers? Oh, come on. Yeah, you're lying to me. I know you're all doing it. You have contractors that come in. You don't have enough folks. You're going to Fiverr or one of these other places. You're getting people to come in, and you got to give them access to your system. And guess what? They're in your stuff. So what are we doing to protect that, right? MFA, TIDIM, logging and monitoring, making sure we've got the right policies and procedures in place is absolutely critical. Like things like DVI, right? Kind of giving them virtual instances, some way to make sure that these folks who I think are vetted don't get in and do bad stuff in my environment. Right? That I don't have the defaults running in my pipelines. Again, just things like this, right? Contactor access. Where am I getting my code? Am I only making sure that I'm integrating signed components and artifacts? Again, just making sure you're doing diligence on that front. This is your intellectual property. I can't say that enough, because I talk to a whole mess of people and they're not where they need to be. Because in a lot of cases, they're developers, right? Or they're ops people, and the security folks were never asked. So you being the security folks need to go start asking some questions. How are we protecting the lifeblood of our business? Let's talk a little bit about cloud native. So securing the underlying technologies. So this is our cloud native trend. Kubernetes is not a toy. A critical step in adopting Kubernetes is maturing the tools to optimize the environment across numerous vectors, including performance, resource, consumption efficiency, resilience, digital experience, software reliability, SBOM, and security. That's a mouthful. You know how long it takes to craft a paragraph like that when I'm trying to build like 4 of these different things and get everything in there that I want to say and have it not sound like gobbledygook? Not easy. Not easy. And I failed clearly with this one, right? I mean, there's more acronyms in there and words I don't understand than anything else, right? But the point is, Kubernetes has taken off. right? We were at KubeCon last week. I wasn't, but one of my partners was, in Amsterdam. Right? They said they had 10,000 people there and 2,000 people on the waiting list. And that's for open source in Europe, right? Kubernetes is happening. So what do we have to do? We have to mature it. So we've seen a whole mess of tools and management frameworks and companies that are focused on giving you enterprise class Kubernetes. The emergence of commercial grade options to increase the manageability and reliability of K8s increases organizations' comfort level in deploying critical workloads. And that's another restraint, or constraint, better way to term it, right? That's another constraint, right? We don't trust it. It's new, it's scary, it's complicated. Anybody try to set up Kubernetes? Couple? Yikes. Not easy, right? A lot of knobs to turn, right? A lot of things you can screw up. So having management tools that help us do that better and important. Right, so tool maturing, security, storage, management, things like backup, migration. We're starting to see tools emerge, all of this. But you do have existing management companies that basically just, kind of start doing a little bit of stuff in Kubernetes and say, we are ready for Kubernetes. Yeah, no, right? There are legacy vendors, and they do all your management of stuff, and they do a very good job on things like your mainframes and your minis, and sometimes even, some of the things that run in your data center, virtualized environments. But you do want to scrutinize when these folks say they can handle cloud-native infrastructure, because it's a different animal, right? So you do want to be considerate of that. And do you need specialists internally, right? Is that going to be one of your strategic platforms? Because if so, you need to have folks that specifically understand this. And by the way, scarce resource, likely very expensive, blows up, all of your salary bands regardless of where you work, and you got to buy them anyway. Right? Or rent them out. Services, there are companies that do that. Grow them internally, not a short-term answer, but something we got to do. But again, this is going to be the infrastructure of the future. Why? Because multi-cloud, right? If you could just say, I'm cool with Azure for everything, or I'm cool with AWS for everything, or Google, or Alibaba, or Oracle, or name your favorite cloud provider, DigitalOcean, right? That's fine, that's great. But that's not the way it works in most companies. So what you're trying to do is get standardization of some layer in your infrastructure. Anybody familiar with AWS Lambda? So serverless technology, yeah, handful of you, some developers out there. Lambda's like the closest thing I've seen in a long time to like magic. So let me get this straight. I just put code up there and it runs when I trigger it? Where's the server? Ooh, don't care. I don't care. I don't have to worry about that stuff anymore. It's cool. But what you write in AWS Lambda, let's move it over to Azure. Azure Functions. Yeah, no, it doesn't work that way. You get to rewrite it if you want to do it in Azure Functions, where if I have something like Kubernetes sitting in the middle of that, is it going to work perfectly? No. Is it going to be a lot faster to migrate and support in a multi-cloud environment? 100%, right? So you have a lot of folks that are moving to Kubernetes as that abstraction level because it is open source and standard. So we're going to see a lot more of that. Now let's talk security in the 15 or so minutes we have left, right? I'll try to get down to 10. What is the most critical aspect of DevSecOps? More data. Shifting left and making everyone responsible for security. That should say security. Breaking down silos between the groups, 18%. Building agility and resilience into shared processes, 33%. So, when you ask the folks what they want out of DevSecOps, it's that we're all working together. Kumbaya! Right? Start up the campfire, get some marshmallows, have some s'mores. Who doesn't like s'mores? That's like, you don't like s'mores? No? I'm not a fan of the marshmallows, but the chocolate on the graham cracker, I'm down with that every day of the week. S'mores, man, you get s'mores. Kumbaya, that's what we're trying to get to. And is it aspirational? Of course it's aspirational. But it gives us vernacular, right? It gives us an opportunity to work with folks on the dev side, folks on the ops side, and hopefully find some common ground to get us to where we need to be. And building agility and resilience. If we know about defects that are related to security and we can get contextual, effective information to those developers, they can fix stuff faster. And we don't have to wait for the next sprint for the Scrum Master to basically deprioritize our features because revenue. Just get it fixed, especially those critical ones. So our first security trend, shift right question mark. The backlash against shift left forces security to question whether it's too onerous to expect developers to take primary responsibility for building security into the application. My minion over there, right? You know, developers don't have anything else to do. When you look in their Jira tickets, I'm sure it's 100% security of stuff and focused right on the things that you are worried about. I can tell you that is not the case. They've got a whole mess of stuff to do. Very little of it has to do with security, right? So this idea that we're going to make the developers responsible for security, nope. Now, we want them to have a shared responsibility, absolutely, right? We want to teach them what that means, because I'm pretty sure when you go to coding boot camp, in a lot of cases, they're not sitting there telling you what secure code looks like. Maybe they are. I'm sure they're not. So they come out of here, they know how to develop code, but they don't know about some simple things that they can do to ensure that the applications they're rolling out aren't Swiss cheese, right? So we got to figure out what's going to work. So the term I heard a number of times, both on Monday and some talks I had yesterday, was shift everywhere. Ooh. Isn't that the same damn thing we were talking about here, right? Making everyone responsible for security? Shift everywhere, which means nothing. Right? If everything is everything, then nothing is nothing, and who the hell knows what we're supposed to do? We're shifting everywhere. No. Right? What we want to do is have representation in the early parts of the application development process, right? Design architecture. Help them understand how this thing can be built in a secure way. And we want to make sure that it flows through the pipeline, that when we do have issues, there's enough information so the developer can actually fix things and know why they have to fix things. So hopefully they don't make the same mistake again. You ever see the movie Groundhog Day? It's old, it's kind of a classic. Yeah. That is kind of like the application security person's life. Because the developers keep making the same mistake over and over again, no matter what you do to tell them. So we just have to keep banging away at it, man. I wish I had a better answer. Like maybe they get religion at some point, or they figure out, what secure coding really means. But I've been doing this too long, so we keep trying to give them more and more information so that they don't keep making the same mistakes again, but they do. The earliest stage you identify and remediate security issues, code, 43%, right? Commit, build, deploy, and then running environment. Yeah, if the first time you're identifying security issues is your runtime environment, let's have a chat after the thing, because you've forgotten the sec part of the whole damn thing, right? So we want to make sure we're not there, but, kind of the reality is I would like to see it even higher than code. Because now that we can program everything, I think I'll get to that on another slide, but now that we can program everything, including our infrastructure, our networks, our workloads, our identity policies, we want to use vetted, structured, secure constructs for that. And we can offer those design patterns. Developers currently play an active role in infrastructure security, a little bit less, application security in both. Because we're embracing infrastructure as code. So now we have developers, or not developers, because it's just developers. That when you're dealing with infrastructure as code, you're not a developer, right? You are a platform engineer. By the way, change your title to platform engineer, and your salary will go up 25 to 30%. I'll let you in on a little secret. You're a developer. You just happen to develop infrastructure. 25 to 30%. Scarcity. It's all a game, right? So platform engineering is the new hotness for developers because we've got a whole bunch of people that know how to develop applications and a lot less people that understand how to build a template for IAM policies that don't open up your environment to every Tom, Dick, and Harry out on the internet. Because if you screw that up, every Tom, Dick, and Harry on the internet gets into your stuff. So I can laughingly say they're just developers that work on infrastructure, but don't have a great sense of how access policies work if you're doing network stuff and how IAM policies work if you're doing IAM, it is going to end very, very badly. So making sure that you have basically the ability to scan and check these things before they go into production, absolutely critical. I wish I knew a technology that if I had code and I ran it through a number of tests, I could identify issues before they went to production. Gosh, I'll think about that question all day before I realize that the answer is DevOps, of course, right? So we want to DevOps our infrastructure. Developer fatigue, right? The pushback is real, their objections are valid. What can we do to help them? We can actually give them secure design patterns. So not that, I know developers get all sensitive, like, don't tell me my application is the same as everybody else's. It's different, it's special, it's a snowflake. It's not a snowflake. It's the same damn thing, right? It's a customer-facing application. It's an analytics application. It's hitting on some kind of data. There are a handful, maybe two handfuls of things that we tend to build. Well, what we can do is we can build templates for what those things should be that integrate security in a way that makes it easy for the developers to just customize what they're doing. I call them design patterns. Some folks call them templates. I don't care. Right? We want to offer those up to the developers to, one, make their job easier so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel, and two, make sure there's some level of security in these things before we go live. They need training. We'll talk about that in a second. And they need tooling. So, anybody heard of this thing called Copilot? You thought you were going to escape the entire talk and I wasn't going to say AI, didn't you? Shame on you. Shame on me. Let's play a drinking game. We would already have lost because that was the first time I said AI in the whole presentation. But we're starting to see, again, kind of code generation happening in the IDE. So you say, what do I want to do? And code. Is it good code? I don't know. Right? Is it secure code? Maybe. But that's just going to get better, right? That's going to help our developers who really don't know a lot about security start to build things that are more secure by nature. And that's a great thing. Everybody's scared of it because they saw the Terminator, like many years ago. And this is a good thing until it's not. And then when it becomes it's not, we're probably all gone, so it doesn't matter at the end of the day. So let's just enjoy Copilot when we can, and hopefully it helps us with some time. Does your dev team have the needed application security responses? Yes, well equipped. Yes, in most cases. Yes, somewhat. Oh gosh, over 75% say their folks have the needed application security resources. Now, do they use those resources? Do they understand what you're telling them? I don't know, maybe a little bit. But we have spent a lot of time trying to get these folks to understand application security, which is why, again, we're starting to focus on some different things. Security champions is one of the last points I want to make, right? So, I'll tell you a little bit, the numbers don't work out, right? We only have so many different resources in the security team, application security team, right? We've got a whole mess more developers, a lot more DevOps teams focusing on things. We have to figure out a way to start to democratize that process. I love the concept of security champions. We have a conference coming up called DevOps On-Ramp next Thursday. I did a panel about security champions. We did one yesterday or Monday at our DevSecOps Connect conference. This is something we all should be thinking about, right? How is it that we start to train, not all developers, right, but some developers that have a competency and an interest to represent security within their development team. So that when somebody has a question, you have somebody that can answer that is not you. because you want to play Tetris or golf or whatever it is that you do in your time after you've finished up your entire list, right? Answering developer questions kind of screws that plan up. So we want to deputize these folks. Should have some cloud and DevOps experience. Send them to fun security training. Everybody likes to break stuff. Let them break stuff, right? Let them start learning, maybe some red teaming, maybe just something, get them interested in the process. Let them self-select on that front. Don't try to make them a security person. They're a developer. We just want them to spend time on development, and we want to empower them. And we got to understand they're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. We just hope they're not making the same mistake over and over again, and if we don't take anything and do anything proactive in order to build up that training muscle, it's just Groundhog Day. Every day of your life, Groundhog Day. Same damn issues, same damn questions. And by the way, what security champions have been proven is to result in better retention on some of those folks and create some more continuity on those teams so that when they're constantly cycling folks out, they have some idea about security so that you don't have to start from square one. And then software supply chain security, right? We're assembling our applications now, whether it's 40%, 60%, or 80% that comes from open source libraries and other components or services within our applications. That is how we're building stuff now. We don't have control over those things, so we better know what's in them. That's called the software supply chain. Everybody's been talking about it for a while. Whether it's an SBOM, right, a software bill of materials, so you get an idea about what's there. You've got to do composition analysis, software composition analysis, right, making sure you're focused on application, container, and API security. Those are the things we can do as security folks to try to reduce the likelihood that our applications are going to be crap when we roll them out. And by the way, it may not even be your crap. Some of it will be your crap for sure. Right? But a lot of it's going to be somebody else's crap. And if we don't know what that is, again, bad day. You ever heard of Log4j? Yeah, some of you may have heard that one. Yeah, that. Right? Anybody remember the JET database? The old folks? Experienced folks? I shouldn't say old, right? Experienced folks out there? JET database? That was Log4j for the client-server age. Right? It was this Microsoft database component that nobody knew was in every single Microsoft product until there was a vulnerability and then an exploit, and holy crap, your entire environment was a mess, right? You had no idea. Oh. So again, if you stick around long enough, you see the same stuff over and over and over again. So they forced me to do this summary and next step thing. You know, basically, they won't accept the presentation until you do that. So we'll go through this stuff real quick, and then maybe we'll take a question or two. DevSecOps is happening. Be ready. All right, next week, let your liver rest, right? Because, you know, anytime we're at RSA, you usually do bad stuff to your liver. Ensure the security and integrity of your existing software pipeline. So start asking, do we protect this thing with all of our intellectual property in there? Identify vulnerable software components in prod and fix them. If you're not doing software composition analysis, get on that like now. Over the next 3 months, empower security team to work with the developers and fix issues. Start developing secure design patterns. That's that idea of giving those folks a head start on constructs that are secure from the get-go. Initiate a security champions program and build a migration plan to develop code using pipelines if you don't already. So again, if you're just getting started with DevOps, then one, come to DevOps OnRamp. That's next Thursday. You can just search for DevOps OnRamp. But it, again, gets you, you know, kind of the idea of starting to embrace DevOps and then integrating security in there. Within 6 months, revisit tooling, select a long-term DevSecOps platform. Yeah, maybe it's best of breed, maybe it's not, but understand what your infrastructure and what that foundation is going to look like, and then address any software supply chain issues. Any questions? I think we have 1 minute before the dude comes out with a hook and, you know, just kind of grabs me. Which, by the way, hasn't happened yet. I'm always ready for it. So, you know, but. Any questions? Comments? Brash New York guy, stop barking at me and let me get on with my day? No? All right. Well, oh, John Michael, yes, sir. Yep. Great question. You bet. So the question is, if you are starting to embrace AI as a supplement for your developers? How do you start controlling some of the copyright and or intellectual property issues of a couple of aspects of that? One is you're actually training somebody else's machine with your data, which can be problematic, and you're also trusting somebody else's code into your, in some cases, production environments, and where are the liabilities there, all sorts of other things. So a lot of considerations, not a lot of firm answers because we're so early in this. We don't know what the real tolerances are going to be for most organizations. We do have a number of folks. So the good thing is Microsoft has really adopted a pretty structured licensing agreement. If you're a GitHub customer and you're thinking about Copilot or any of those other environments, they do segment out intellectual property in a way that does protect the company and says they'll only train the machines that are working on your stuff with your data. So how they're pulling metadata out of that, do I really believe them? I don't know, but contractually, they basically say we're not going to train our stuff on your data. We've got enough data that we're training our stuff beyond that. But that's a great question. But it's certainly something to keep an eye on, and it's something that, again, and we don't really like lawyers too much, but we got to talk to the lawyers to make sure that we're kind of on the right side of that as we start to move forward. So I'm getting the stuff. Oh, one more. Yeah. So DevSecOps platform like a GitLab or a JFrog or one of those things. So it's really deciding what your tool chain is going to be, kind of underlying the environment, CloudBees, right? Kind of, so something to figure out what those tools will be as you move strategically. Well, great. Appreciate everybody getting up in the morning. And we'll see you later on. Great. Thanks, James. You bet.